And now to help us break down who's right here, who's wrong, as well as who's going to get the blame one way or the other, we're joined by former New York State Assemblyman Richard Brodsky, as well as a contributor to RFL, and former New York Lieutenant Governor Betsy McCaughey. Richard, Betsy, guys, thank you very much for a few minutes. It's certainly not a stabilizing message when the government shuts its doors, especially in today's day and age. We agree to that?
It's shocking, in fact, that they're arguing over the 2011 budget, which was supposed to be complete last October, well before the November election. But unfortunately, when both houses were dominated by the Democratic Party and members of those houses were reluctant to take stands on issues that might injure them during the election, they kept delaying doing a budget. So in fact, first it landed in the lap of the lame duck Congress, that Congress lacking moral authority to make any real decisions, in fact, avoided them. And now the new Congress, which is divided, the House dominated by Republicans, the Senate by Democrats, is arguing over the numbers. The Republicans have taken a very strong line on insisting on a 2% reduction in spending year over year because they know in 2012 they face even more formidable.
But have they taken a strong line? And by that I mean not what the number should or shouldn't be, but you've all dealt with budgets before. Usually when you've got two parties and they agree on the number, as the majority, as you know, Speaker Boehner did, and the Democrats, they had a $33 billion number. He goes back and all of a sudden the Tea Party says, go back again, we don't agree.
No, they do not agree on the number. That is incorrect. The members of the House of Representatives do not agree on the number.
No, I know they don't now, but the issue was their representative, the Speaker, went there and said, here's my number. Harry Reid met him there. And then all of a sudden, when they thought they had a deal...
Boehner never made a commitment to that. The fact is that a majority of the Republicans in the House of Representatives are demanding the 2% cut. If members of Congress can't find 2% to cut in a budget of this size, when the federal government is spending 25% of GDP, there's something wrong.
Is this about finding another $8 or $9 billion or something else?
No, it's about a serious and important initiative by the Republican Party, which is dominated by the extreme right in both social and fiscal matters, who want to see the government substantially reduced. And it sort of worked, but when it comes to the practicalities, take two issues. Clean air enforcement. They want to take the money away from clean air enforcement. Take Planned Parenthood. They fund away from that. They have every right to make that point. They're not doing anything that's immoral. They're doing something that's just profoundly wrong. And the fights that are going on are classic.
Driving this, because right now, if you listen to the Democrats' perspective, and then we can respond whether they're right or not, cleverly or honestly, they're saying, we wish John Boehner the best of luck here. He's got to go back to his base, and now 80-some new members who, in effect, want government to shut down, openly are rooting for government to shut down, talking about the Tea Party. And as a consequence, Democrats say, we don't know who we're negotiating with. We think we have a deal. Somebody comes back and they say, my new members won't go for it.
I disagree. It's not the House Republicans who want government to shut down. It's really the president who's angling for this. He believes he has the most to gain, as President Clinton did a decade and a half ago when the government shut down under the leadership of Newt Gingrich.
Let me just clarify why. Let me just clarify why. The
House offered the president the option of another continuing resolution for another week. A continuing resolution.
But we both know what's in that continuing resolution for 1 week.
No, it was to fund the troops. It was to fund the troops, and it was to repeal portions of appropriations that illegitimately funded Obamacare a year before those appropriations were supposed to be slipped in.
You just created a lot into that last sentence, but they built in enough poison pills that nobody seriously took what they slapped together last night.
It was only for a week.
Okay, but again, what they got in that 1 week, we all know at this table what that means and how politics works. Where do they start the negotiation the following week?
Just wave when you guys have finished arguing. Look. The game is important, and there were politics involved. I'm never offended by that on both sides. That's fine. This is a big, important fight in the lives of American people. If you believe in reproductive freedom for women, then what the Republicans in the House want to do is just wrong. If you believe that the clean air laws of the nation should be enforced, then what the Republicans are doing are wrong.
Those are not the issues, by the way. Those are smoke screens put up at the last minute.
It has always difficult when, in a debate like this, we're challenging the legitimacy and the honesty of the people with whom we disagree. I don't do that for the Tea Party faction. I think they believe what they believe, and I think they think it's good for America. I just think it's wrong. And if these debates are going to have any attachment to the way American people live their lives, we're going to have to see through the accusations and start discussing what kind of a country we want.
Listen,
and that doesn't happen.
What I want to do right now is
we're
going to jump a quick break. We can't even agree on what they're necessarily fighting over, it sounds like, but maybe we can agree as to who has the most to lose, not just politically, but also what the American public feel about this as well. Stay with us, everybody. We take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have a lot more on that. Let's talk about the public right now as to who, if this goes to a shutdown. We saw the consequences. You mentioned it earlier, Betsy, about what happened last time there was a shutdown. Newt Gingrich, obviously, it didn't work out well for him, and he even said in retrospect he would have done it different. John Boehner said, what happened to Gingrich won't happen to me. So when you get snapshots in the polling of what the public wants and who they're going to blame if they don't get it, it's interesting. When asked whether or not they want a compromise, the public does, Americans favor a budget compromise over a shutdown, whatever the principal divide is, 58-33%. And when further, they said if there is a shutdown, if Richard's wrong and then they don't meet the midnight deadline, they actually close the doors, we take a look at the numbers as to who will blame whom. 37% of the public will blame congressional Republicans, 20% will blame congressional Democrats, 20% President Obama here. At the end of the day, do you think Republicans, we all lose as a country, will agree if they shut the doors, but politically, who do you think risks the biggest exposure?
Well, I'm really not sure who's taking the biggest risk politically, but I know that this nation is taking a huge risk by not reducing spending. Richard said before we're disinvesting in the nation. No, this vast public spending is not an investment in the future. It's devastating the future. It's not government that provides for the future. We need a thriving economy, and the more the government spends, the less we can invest in the private sector that produces jobs.
Who has a kid in the schools, or who's an older person who uses Medicaid or Medicare, or someone who wants roads that don't have potholes and go places they need to go. There is a balance to be struck. And the ideological attack on the legitimacy of government, the legitimacy of public spending, not just the level, is at the core of what this fight's about, and it's why people have drawn a line in the sand. Everyone's entitled to their point of view. Everyone's entitled to their ideology. But if in the end the government's going to shut down over $4, $5, $10 billion and the issue of reproductive health care and clean air enforcement, then there will be a political consequence to that dynamic, and I think it will reflect what you see in the polls. The Tea Party is not America, and the extreme right-wing views that we're getting as sort of the views of the Republican Party as a whole are not the views of a George Pataki or a Nelson Rockefeller or a Jacob Javits or a Peter King, people who understand that government's role is to provide a society in which the private sector can flourish, but people can live decent lives. And that's what's really under attack, and that's why the Democrats are going to hold firm, and that's why in the end
and we'll find out in just a few hours if in fact the government does stay open, regardless of how we feel about this fight that led us to this point. Betsy, Richard, thank you both very much for a few minutes. All right, when we come back, everybody, we're going to hear from you on who you think would be to blame if there's a showdown, and this isn't just theoretical. We're hours away from that very possibility. Please stay with us.